Good morning, America. Thank you for watching Taxes Made Easy here on the smartmoneyculture.tv. We've got an interesting show today. Mainly, we're going to focus on how inflation is hurting people, not only in their own personal wallets, but also as a country. I'm just kind of focusing on how to address that, how to prepare for dealing with the IRS. So a lot of people just go in and they think whatever their situation is, that's it. They can't adjust or prepare for adjusting their situation to get a better resolution from the IRS. And that can make all the difference. So I'm going to focus on how to best help you prepare through these tough times. And we'll be back in a short break and dive into this topic. So stay tuned, and thank you again for watching live or on rebroadcast. Welcome back, everybody. So again, it's kind of an interesting topic because it's affecting a lot of people. How is inflation hurting you and being affected in the global market? So, first article we're going to talk about today is from Fox Business, and then we've got some articles from CNBC that I think really kind of hit this topic hard. So, this one is talking about how consumer ETFs or spending habits are really showing what's happening with inflation. Walmart is one of the big beneficiaries here. So you're getting upper income shoppers earning around $100,000 um, hitting Walmart in droves. So Walmart, Costco, and what is truly happening? We have the true inflation numbers here. They claim that the CPI is around 3.2%, which is still higher than wanted. But when you look at the overall economy, there are so many categories that are still hitting massively high inflation. There's fewer deals out there, especially for groceries. Housing costs have kind of stalled, but that's due to high interest. So even though the cost of housing has actually stalled, there are fewer deals. There's less on the market, and so inventory is down, but demand is down because people don't want to buy. Everybody's holding off because the Fed rates are still very high, and you're looking at 8% or higher as far as monthly the interest rate on monthly payments. So again, the actual hit to consumers' wallets is still very, very high among when it comes to housing and getting the housing market. Rents are not much better. So diving into this, they look at two different um, tickers: the consumer discretionary select sector. So a fancy way of saying they look at General Motors, Chipotle, Deckers, and they're saying that one is down for the year. So again, down slightly. I don't know why they have this is the exact same ticker twice. But then if they go look at the Staples select sector, which is necessary needs, it's up more than 8%. Procter & Gamble, Costco, Walmart. So prices have creeped up there, but at the same time, people are spending more on what they need instead of trendier items, more expensive luxury goods. So again, this kind of just tries to show the difference between the Walmart ticker going up and then some of the increase in Walmart shares. On the other hand, you have a luxury place. Again, this is just one example of it, but Blueberry or Burberry, if you know who they are. Again, this is a luxury fashion house. Um, Traditional men's trench coat retails for $25,000 or more. So again, things are tight. People don't spend on luxury items. 34% drop in annual profits. So again, a huge blow to to some of these luxury items. And so people are taking their money and looking at that's your CPI. Usually it is around 2% inflation, depending on what you're looking at. And then currently they're saying it's around the mid threes, 3.4%. Um, and then 3.5% in March. So still almost double what it should be. I think it's still very low. And it's not tracking inflation correctly. There's still plenty of things that have been excluded, not counted, and it's I think it provides a real disservice to what is actually happening in the market. And who does that affect? Older households more than anybody else. So here we have a CNBC article talking about high inflation harming older households more than anybody else. And I agree. I see this day in and day out. People can't afford their bills. While government data is saying that inflation may be showing signs of easing, the Fed is disagreeing. That's why they're not cutting rates. If things continue the way they are, they very well might have to increase rates further, and that's what everybody's kind of afraid of. If they have to increase rates further, it's going to put a skid on any kind of recovery. It's going to, it's going to hurt. Where interest rates are right now are already hurting. Historically, the rates aren't crazy high, but I don't think we're looking at true numbers because the government numbers are manipulated. Now, this isn't just the Biden administration. This is previous administrations as well. To have better numbers, the unemployment numbers have been changed. How they look at it, the CPI's changed, and they just changed. And this is one thing, it's huge frustration when we found that out. My staff was just very furious with the IRS. The inflation rate from last year for basic goods, the IRS changed what the measure that they were using, and they claimed that there was zero to no inflation. They actually dropped what they were allowing in many categories. So for food, clothing, and housing, they actually decreased it. So they're claiming that people are spending less on the basic requirements, which is nuts. It hasn't gone down. It's continued to go up. And who does it hurt the most? It hurts the people that are struggling the most. That hurts average Americans, poor Americans more than anything else. So again, it's a sneaky way of going out and it's essentially a tax on anybody in the lower income brackets. And it hurts everybody. So even if people are making, 100,000 or so, a lot of the adjustments hurt them as well. So I want to focus on older homes, retirees. This is one of the big issues here. So last year, they got a 3.2% increase. Inflation for last year, for 2023, was much higher than that. And 2025, they're saying they might get the same amount. That might be accurate for 2025, but for 2024, for 2023 and 2022, inflation was much higher than these numbers. So that's why a lot of people are hurting, even if they're getting Social Security that is adjusted for inflation. It can't keep up. So how do retirees normally handle higher inflation? Because again, a 3.2 increase does not keep up with rental increases, does not keep up with the increases in insurance, which have skyrocketed. Car insurance, homeowners insurance, property taxes are going up like crazy across the country. And the number one way they keep up with this is hitting their retirement, taking more out of it. So if you have income and investments that can keep up with rising prices, this should be fine. If not, they're taking more and more from their retirement, and it's hurting them. It's hurting their retirement and the way how they plan. So if you have wealthier households tend to do better in downturns because they have a lot of investments in the same kind of things that are increasing in value. Um, and if you don't have that, though, it really hurts them long term. So they have a negative impact on how much they immediate consumption as well as future consumption. So basically, you have to cut back on what you're purchasing and using now as much as possible, and also reduces your if you pull more money from your retirement, um, and again, true inflation is more than what the government's claiming, so that even the cost of living increases don't keep up with that. So it hurts the poorest the most. It hurts people relying on retirement when you have crazy, higher than normal inflation. Um, so again, they tend to cut back on savings and increase withdrawals, and they take a big hit to the future by doing that. So one of the bigger concerns in this last article I want to talk about here, we're going to be spending less time on articles today, um, talking about Social Security. And this is an interesting take on Social Security because it doesn't just say, look, Social Security is in trouble. It is in trouble. But the question is, how bad will it be? Now, they say the biggest myth about Social Security is that when it runs out of funds, that it's going to crash and burn and nobody's going to get paid anything. Not true. There are still plenty of people working, even though we have this bubble, this baby boomer bubble, where you're going to have a lot more retirees as a percentage compared to people working and paying into the system. You're going to have a lot fewer people working, supporting more retirees collecting on Social Security. There will still be funds there. There's still people paying into it. So what's going to happen, and I've talked about this, how Social Security, unless we fix it, there are a couple ways they're going to address this. One, they're just going to hack away the benefits for the wealthiest. Now, people have paid into this their whole lives. And the crazy thing is, yes, they get taxed on it too. But it's still taxable income when you start receiving it. So they get you going both ways here. But one of the other concerns with Social Security is that even though it can be taxed, you want to still take out the maximum amount. And that's really what this article focuses on. So we're going to dive into this when we come back from our this next break. We've got just a few seconds before then. But I think it's important to point out that Social Security as an institution is not going to fail and just fall apart. It's just going to take some massive cuts. So we'll be right back after this break. Okay, thank you for sticking with us through the break. And again, just want to kind of go over Social Security. So again, this is a big concern for most people. So when Social Security runs out of money, which is expected to happen in the next decade, regardless of what the economy does, because Congress keeps spending the money. Because Congress keeps overspending. They every dollar they can get their hand on, they spend. Again, they spend like drunken sailors. And being a sailor, I take no offense to that. Former sailor. But it's just, so the money that should be there should be producing income, should be gaining with the market, is all spent. There's just, the government owes Social Security billions upon billions of dollars, and the money's not there because it's been spent. by both political parties. Overspending has really created a huge problem here. So there's the excess money, this trust fund that's there is going to be out in less than a decade. And then the question is, what's going to happen when it runs out of money? It's not going to completely run out of money because people are still paying into the system. So everybody that's still working will still be paying in. And so some of the estimates is that it's going to take a 20% hit. Now, how are they going to do that? Congress, I'm sure they're going to, right now, nobody's planning to address inflation. Nobody's planning to address Social Security. And the problem with runaway spending is that eventually interest in the debt is going to take priority over other issues. So I just saw an article where the increased inflation is going up so quickly. Small changes in the overall rate can really hurt the amount that we're paying on our own interest on the debt. And that's leaving less and less money available for other big items in the budget. And this gentleman in one article mentioned that the military budget, defense budget, is getting squeezed now by inflation. Now, there's plenty of waste in the military budget, as in every budget, but instead of looking at things and cutting spending, we're still spending more and more and more. So Social Security is going to run into the same issue where it's going to run up against, it's going to be paying interest on our debt or entitlement spending, which includes Social Security. People will get upset when you say that and say, oh, it's not entitlement. I paid into this. Yeah, but then Congress spent all your money. So it's an obligation that the U.S. government has to pay, and it's going to come to the point where they're not going to be able to pay the full amount. They're just not going to be able to pay the full amount that you're entitled to. So this is why relying on Social Security to retire is a bad idea. Now, it is one part of the puzzle. But so when it runs out of money in its trust fund, it'll still have money coming in. I would expect a 20 to 30% cut. Now, 30% is more than what most people are saying, but again, the numbers are just going to get worse as we kick the debt can down the road and don't do anything about it. So it's going to affect defense spending, it's going to affect Social Security spending, it's going to affect everything else in the budget as inflation, our interest on the debt kind of becomes the elephant in the room. It should already be the elephant in the room, but nobody's talking about it or dealing with it responsibly. So even with those cuts looming, and a lot of people are thinking, I need to take Social Security now, as soon as possible, because it's not going to be around forever. It will be around. That 20 to 30% cut that's estimated will probably hit the wealthiest the most. So the knee-jerk reaction is, let's raise taxes on the rich to pay for this, so the average person, the majority of voters, can still get their full Social Security. That's going to be very expensive, and taxing the rich, it just leads to less productivity. But that's a knee-jerk reaction from the left. From the right, they want to adjust Social Security, but again, the Republicans have come up with very, very little. George Bush was the last one to try to actually address these issues with Social Security, and he got shouted down pretty handily. And so they haven't had many solutions either. They're talking about cutting spending to try to get things under control, but they're spending just right along with the Democrats. So nobody's too serious about this. So that's why I don't think anybody's going to really stand up and tackle this huge issue facing our country. So expect more taxes on the wealthy. Expect the wealthiest to have their benefits cut the most. But even if they, and this is what they're talking about, even though Social Security is going to hit this, even if you get a 20% cut, it can absolutely help you to delay benefits. So again, and I agree with them on most of this. So fears about Social Security shouldn't be the primary reason for claiming retirement benefits at 62. If you wait till 70, that's when you get the maximum amount. So full retirement is between 66 and 67. Um, so again, even with they claim stronger economy, a lot of weakness in the economy right now. Um, but there's no argument that they'll be depleted in the next decade. But the trust funds, that's the extra funds that are in there, and you'll still have people paying into it. It's not going to just go away. So that's the biggest fear, that it's just going to go away. Not true. And this, so really talks about the most popular age to which to claim is 62. 29% of people taking Social Security at 62, the earliest possible age. You get it for longer, but you end up getting less when you claim it early. And it can hurt you. So if you can hold off, that's about a 30% benefit cut for not waiting for full retirement age. Again, that's between 66 and 67. And if you put it off till 70, you get an additional 8% roughly per year until you max out at 70. So I'm saying 60% of total beneficiaries claimed their retirement benefits before their full retirement age, around 66 and 67. And it said 16%, just 16%, claimed at their full retirement age. If you go beyond that to age 70, you get an 8% benefit increase per year, but only 10% of claimants are waiting until age 70. So who do you think's waiting? The people that already have a plan in place. They already know what they're doing, and they don't need their Social Security as much. So ironically, those that need it less are getting the biggest bang for the buck by waiting. So it's talking about the why. Well, the top reason people are claiming it early is that they think Social Security may run out of money and stop making payments. That's from a 2023 survey. So it's not going to run out of money. They'll still have money coming in. And I think Congress will work to try to preserve as much as they can for Social Security for the average American, because then the voters will be really upset. And who votes more than anybody else? The elderly. But the problem is nobody's doing anything about it. So it's funny that the biggest reason is that they're afraid it's going to run out of money. It still will help you the most, because even if the trust fund runs out, and you take a 20% cut, you'll still lose 30% by claiming it early. So that the little bit of money you get claiming up front, you take that 30% cut, and you're still going to get that same decrease in benefits if it hits you or whoever's claiming it. That cut is coming and it's going to happen. The question is who's going to be hurt by it. So it only hurts you to claim money early. So the second reason is that people need the money for health. They just don't have. They need something to make their necessary bills, it's tough. I talk to people all the time. There's times I tell people, look, you might want to consider claiming Social Security before full retirement age. So when they don't have anything, when they can't meet their bills, something's better than nothing, and that's the mind. Sometimes people need to claim it early. The problem is, it's you might be losing some money in the long run, but if you haven't planned well your retirement, and sometimes life just happens. A lot of times life just happens. So even if you can't wait years to claim your benefits, waiting months. And this is one thing people think of it, I can't wait another year, I can't wait. If you wait 6 months, it can have a big impact on you. So every month will increase your benefits that you wait. And so instead of getting $2,000 per month at age 67, You might only get $1,400 if you claim it at age 62. Waiting till age 70 would give you $2,480 per month. While that's a big time difference between 62 and 70, people are living longer than ever, and that's $1,000 difference would really make it help people out in the long run. So again, if you can just delay 6 months, 12 months, or 18 months, are very helpful in the long run when going for Social Security. So again, there are personal reasons, lack of income or poor health conditions are the big driving factors in people drawing it early. And one of the big advantages here is they are adjusted annually for inflation. A lot of other savings, annuities, pensions aren't adjusted for inflation. So a lot of information there to consider. I've got one last article that I'm going to go through. Little bit of a different tack here, but this is put out by the Taxpayer Advocate Service. And I've talked about the Taxpayer Advocate Service. They are a division within the IRS, so they're part of the IRS, but they're supposed to be kind of a watchdog. So they operate outside of the normal channels, but you can use Taxpayer Advocate to get through and deal with thorny issues where you just can't get a response from the IRS. And I just want to touch on this because this is very helpful. Small business filing and record keeping requirements. I'm not going to go through this. I've talked about most of this stuff already. And this is who it talks about, the type of small business filing requirements. Record keeping, absolutely key if you have a business. And then some resources. So I'm going to link this again. Very helpful things. I might talk about it, dive into more tomorrow. But we want to stay on topic today. So I had an interesting conversation yesterday at church, which is what's kind of driving this conversation today. It's an old elderly couple, and they're still pretty active. They're snowbirds. They have a home in Idaho, a home in California, and they travel between locations. And they came up and said, "Hey, we have a tax question." I said, "Okay." And again, people ask me every now and then about tax questions. I'm more than happy to sit there and answer what I can. And this is an example of not planning. So they had two homes. They needed to sell both homes. And on one home, they would get the exemption of $500,000 for a married couple. But in the second home, because they're selling it so quickly, they're going to lose out on that exemption. So this is why sitting down with the financial planner, sitting down with the CPA, planning out what you're going to do if you think you're going to need assets, move them from property to a more liquid, an investment, any kind of investment accounts that you're relying on for retirement. It's probably the best place to keep your assets, especially if you think you're going to face some hefty tax bills. So tax planning can save people hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it's not just for the ultra rich. It's for your average individual preparing for retirement, preparing to, how do I deal with these assets? So, it's just kind of, and I couldn't help them. I referred them on to an excellent CPA. We work with plenty of excellent CPAs. And I said, look, you need to talk to them. And I would have talked to them yesterday. But they're already set that they have to sell both homes this year, and they're just bracing for the hit. So some of my suggestions here is come talk to me early. Go talk to a CPA early. And I have no problem telling someone, look, this isn't the right fit for me. This is who you need to talk to. This is how it needs to be addressed. But planning things out, and if you know you're going to take a tax hit, come talk to me first. There's all kinds of people that come and talk to me and they say, look, I'm going to owe a tax bill for 2023. And ideally, you talk to the CPA first, try to avoid or mitigate whatever um, tax bill you're going to get hit with. But sometimes it's just going to happen, or life happened, and you're going to get hit with this tax bill. The sooner you come and talk to me, the more I can help you out. A lot of people think that the house has to already be on fire before I can help them out. It's like, no, no, no. The sooner you can come to me, the more we can prevent these issues, the more we can prevent levies, bank, wage garnishments, all the nasty, crazy stuff that happens with the IRS, and we can be prepared. I've had very, very big cases, hundreds of thousands of dollars, with the revenue officer signed, where at the end of the day, they asked me, well, what did you do? It didn't seem like you did a whole lot. I was like, I prevented a whole lot. Remember when the IRS threatened A, B, C, D, and E, and then within 20 minutes they completely changed their tune because we were already prepared? Oh, yeah. So that's why I prefer that people come talk to me early. If it's not, something that a tax professional or a tax attorney can handle at that moment, it's better to deal with it and prepare for it with the CPA first. We'll refer you to CPA. We'll keep track of the case and then make sure that you're taken care of long term. So some of the things to be aware of, the IRS is not doing much. They're actually doing plenty to hurt people under the current administration. So I mentioned earlier that the allowables, monthly amounts for food, clothing, housing, transportation, overall, they decreased them year over year. And it makes no sense. I think it's a blatant attack on the poorest in our country. Another big thing that they did is that they used to have a 150% rule. So, with the market being as volatile as it has, especially in housing and utilities, for years, cross administrations, didn't matter the party, they had this rule in place where you could get 150% of the housing and utilities allowable. So if you're spending $3,000 but the allowable was only $2,000, they would give you 50% more of the allowable, so 150% total. And they would say, okay, we know you're above the allowable, but we'll give you up to this amount, up to $3,000 credit, because markets are crazy. And about 3 years ago, the Biden administration changed that, or the IRS under the Biden administration. They got rid of that, and now anybody spending more than that, tough luck. And especially with most markets in the United States, it's really hurt people. We're going to finish up with this short section after the break. Welcome back, everybody, for this final segment. We were talking about how some of these changes have really hurt the poorest the most, or people struggling with increases in housing utilities. If you've had to buy a home lately, if you've had to move, if you're renting, you're probably paying a lot more than what the government is allowing. I was talking to someone I think it was last Friday. They're easily spending $1,000 more than the allowable, and they'd been in their home for a while. But again, it's just one of those things that the IRS has actually cut drastically what they will allow people to get credit for when dealing with the IRS. So if you're spending more than the allowables, they tell you, tough luck, cut somewhere else. And the worst thing that they've done is not allowing people equity in their, to have equity in their homes or doing offer and compromise. So it's taken, retirees on fixed incomes that they've paid down their home, or they've been living in their home for 10, 15, 20 years, and they try to do everything right, and then they get hit with the tax bills by surprise, and the IRS wants them to take that money out of the equity in their home, or force them to do something else. So one of my biggest suggestions here is how do you deal with this? First of all, there are ways to prepare for dealing with the IRS. And I talked about this last week, and had an interesting conversation with a friend yesterday, and it was talking about things that need to be in the light. So you talk about tax evasion, tax fraud, and people are really nervous. They don't want to go to jail. They don't want to have any of these issues with the IRS. So as long as you can put it in the light, you can share it with the IRS and not be afraid. Hey, I moved money around. I sold a home. I put it into an investment. I did this or that. As long as you can be upfront with it with the IRS, they might not like it, but when you're using their rules and regulations for you, you'll be fine. If you feel like you have to hide it, though, if you can't be upfront and honest with what you did, that's where you're in trouble. I have many examples of people that have hid information or tried to hide information, and sometimes they get rid of it, but it's never something I would counsel against. And I've counseled people plenty of times to disclose assets. To take, true story, one person had $200,000 in a match or something. First of all, you're losing money on this due to inflation. Second of all, it could be easily stolen. You can't insure something that you're hiding. And so they took that money, invested in it, still was protected from the IRS because they were retirement age, and then they started getting returns on their money that they were able to invest. So, number one thing, if you have concerns, there's a problem, come talk to us early. Sit down with us, sit down with the CPA and say, first of all, how can I save money? If I'm planning to do this in the next few years, that's why there's tax professionals to help guide people. And again, you can have a team of people helping you out. Ideally, an estate attorney, if you have a business, a corporate attorney, and a tax professional, either a CPA, or if you're going to have tax issues, me as a tax attorney or someone similar to me. But by dealing with this and preparing, you can avoid most of the pain and frustration of getting hit with huge tax bills and not knowing what to do. So when I talk to people, there's plenty of times we plan out. This is when you want to retire. This is when we want to set up. We can set up this resolution for now, and then a year or two, put you off in something else, either an offer and compromise to settle the debt, or we do a hardship status until the debt ages, or a lot of things that I just mentioned. If there's a new administration and a new take in direction at the IRS, like I said, this has only been the last administration or the current administration where we seem to turn so hard against the poorest in American society. We're hoping a lot of these rules get removed. And if that happens, we're going to be doing a lot of offers where people that should have been able to do it and would have been able to do it under prior administrations and just can't because the crackdown on the poorest in American society. And it's not in the news. It's not something people talk about. But if you're familiar with how the IRS is operating, it's absolutely hurting the poorest. So, building a retirement, planning for the future is absolutely key. So there are ways to do that. The key is, and here's the problem, you've got to sit down and plan things out. You don't have, if you're not retired, the IRS treats most retirement funds as available to just give to them. Cash it out, give us the money. That includes 401ks and IRAs if you get hit with the penalty. But if you can invest it and lock it up, or you have a pension that you're not entitled to until you retire, one, that keeps it out of your hands so you can't spend it and get hit with extra taxes. But two, once you do retire, you can take a lot of those funds. So you can have a rental property and still qualify for many things with the IRS. And then when you get close to retirement at the right age, you can sell it, take those funds, put that into a retirement account for you and your your spouse or significant other, and then you have a nice big nest egg to retire with. But it's all about planning these things out. And again, I can't tell you how many people have come to us. They've sold it, they've traded, they've moved things around, and when you go to deal with the IRS, they're going to see all of that. And it makes it so much harder if you make it too complicated. The IRS just says, well, we're just going to treat it like a dissipated asset. You can afford to pay us, instead of paying us, you move money around. It makes so much more sense to talk to a tax professional first. And one of the biggest mistakes I see people make is they go and they in lump sum pay off credit card debts. There are ways to address that and have it where it won't hurt you so much when you actually go and deal with the IRS, but you should deal with the IRS before paying off credit card debt, before paying off personal loans. Come sit down, talk to someone to plan out how to prepare for and deal with big IRS issues, or sitting down with a CPA and planning out how to avoid those issues in the first place. I've seen plenty of people go and sell homes, multiple homes, and they get hit with these huge tax bills because they didn't plan it out correctly. Like my example from earlier, if they would have, stayed in one home, claimed one home as their main residence, stayed in there more than half the year, they could have sold one home or rented it out, or just, they could have done something and then moved into their other home, made that their primary residence, and after a couple of years sold both and claimed the exemption, the $500,000 exemption for both homes. So again, would have saved them hundreds of thousands of dollars. And one of our big goals here is to help people not only plan for their future, but get in a better situation financially for their long-term financial health. So you can move assets around, you can put money into retirement if it makes sense. If you're still too young, you might want to be paid, and you can pay off debt, but again, it's if you do it in a lump sum amount, that's where it really raises the IRS attention and say, oh, well, you paid it $10,000, but if you pay $1,000 a month, and you're just paying extra on your credit cards, that doesn't raise the red flags like that with the IRS. So there's plenty of ways to do this right, plenty of ways to get good information, and we've been really able to help people plan, help people see exactly how they can not only save money, but avoid paying a lot, legally avoid, so that paying taxes. So it's called tax avoidance. And the Supreme Court has ruled that you have a legal right as a taxpayer to avoid paying as much as you can in taxes. IRS can't get upset about it because you have a legal right to do this. You have to go in and talk to professionals. This is what the wealthy do all the time. And it doesn't have to cost you an arm and a leg. It can save you so much just by talking to people, getting things addressed, handled early, and sometimes we're planning out years in advance. So again, it doesn't have to be an immediate issue. There are plenty of times when people say, look, I want to do this. And part of it, sometimes it's bankruptcy planning. When's the right time to file bankruptcy? And to use that to address part of the issue, and then we address the other part of the issue. But again, having that team of professionals and using that advice to support you and your family as you go through this crazy adventure called life can absolutely help give you more money. Plan so you can max out your Social Security. So number one thing is ask questions. Doesn't hurt to ask questions. We offer a free consultation. There are many firms out there that offer a free consultation. But what you don't want is just to call someone that's going to give you a sales pitch right away. They're going to actually try to help you out rather than try to get you on the hook to pay them a bunch more money. So if you feel that's why it's important to call around, it's important to talk to a CPA. We get plenty of referrals from CPAs. Some I don't know them, but they've heard about us and they've referred people to us, and that's why I always try to connect with them afterwards. But again, it's so important to look at people's reviews, get an idea of who you're talking to, but talk to a good CPA, talk to a tax professional when you have tax issues. Make sure you're ahead of the curve. Hands down, it pays to be ahead of the curve rather than waiting till the IRS is coming after you. I've seen cases where they're trying to seize property, and in those cases, it really is. Sometimes it's too late for even me to help them. I talk about these horror stories of someone that does everything wrong, and I can't tell you how many times I've gotten bad advice, horrible advice from people charging huge, insane fees just to mess up their case. So if someone talks to you and says, well, let's go to tax court, we can go to tax court, and they want to charge you $20,000 or $25,000 to do so, get a second opinion. I've got multiple cases. I've had many cases where going to tax court actually hurt them substantially rather than just dealing with the IRS. And the attorneys ended up getting paid, but they ended up getting hurt. So number one key, ask questions, be curious. You should be, again, that's just should be something from life. I went to my son's graduation Saturday, and be out there, be constant life learners. If this is not your cup of tea, this is not what you're interested in. Some of the best, smartest things I've heard people say is like, look, this is outside my realm. I need good advice. I said, that's fine, because I've gone and worked on my own plumbing and messed it up and had to pay more. I've tried to work on my own cars. And, there's things I can do, but then there's things that are outside my league. I'm not a mechanic. And then I take it to the mechanic after I mess it up, and they do it right. One of the smartest things I hear people say is like, look, I don't know what I'm doing. This isn't my area of expertise. I need some advice. I said, that's, always a very, very smart thing to do, to recognize what you do know, what you don't know, and go get help so that you have good advice moving forward. And again, our number is 520-485-7371. You can reach us through our website at guardiantaxlaw.com. You can, if you have questions about the show, you can always go to thesmc.tv or smartmoneyculture.tv. And there's a button at the top right where you can click that and get more information about the show. And you can access older shows on our YouTube channel as they get posted. And that's Guardian Tax Law channel at YouTube. So again, if you have any questions about older shows, feel free to reach out. There's a lot of information that's been produced. And that's our whole goal, is to help people understand this crazy bureaucracy that's the IRS and state taxes, and be able to make wise decisions for them and their family. So that's one of the biggest benefits and reasons why we do what we do. We just had another case accepted. I think it was Thursday or Friday, for $20. And I talked to people, and a lot of people tell me, no, there's no way that can be accepted. There's no way you can take care of people like that. Absolutely can. Absolutely can. And it depends if you've prepared. The more you prepare, the more likely you are to get a great resolution. And sometimes it's just not the good fit. But knowing what your rights are, knowing what your options are beforehand can help you more than anything else. So again, give us a call, 520-485-7371, or we'll see you tomorrow on our next show. And I hope we can continue providing excellent information, tips and tools, and how to deal with the IRS. Have a great day.